day, ladies and gentlemen. It's Eric Coffin. I'm here at the May 2019 Metal Investor Forum in Vancouver. I'm here with Ian Bliss. He's the CEO of Northern Shield Resources, NRN on the venture company that I follow and invited to present here. Ian, those of you that are subscribers, it's no secret that I'm a big fan of following discovery companies and discoverers. And by that I mean, ideally true discoverers, companies that are willing to go out and actually try to find something new, something that nobody's really ever worked on before. That's something that most of the companies in the sector talk about as being a goal, but very, very, very few companies actually do that. Northern Shield is one of the few companies that I know of that's actually willing to go out and try to find literally brand new things. As it turns out, you've had some luck with that. I mean, let's talk about your project. You've got a bunch of projects, but one project in particular. Shot Rock in Nova Scotia, and then this brand new one, Root and Cellar in Newfoundland. And I should point out that Shot Rock is essentially a brand new discovery, but in fairness to the vendor at Root and Cellar, that's largely a brand new discovery too, because basically all of these showings, and there's some great ones on this new property, the prospector that optioned it to you, he basically found all that stuff on his own. It wasn't there until he got there and went looking for it.
That's correct. I mean, there have been one showing in the northern portion of the property that had some work by an exploration company in the 90s and some drilling, but everything else he has discovered since then, and with some very dedicated and hard work. I mean, some of these trenches are 50, 100 meters long excavation. He's done that all by hand, by shovel, by pick, by broom, and buckets of water. And so this is absolutely untouched. So it is a brand new discovery by this prospector. A lot of hard work, and not just prospecting, but he's been self-learning along the way too on these systems. And so we've, by good luck, we've hooked up with two very dedicated prospectors, both in Nova Scotia and in Newfoundland.
Do you want to give us I mean, you just announced the acquisition like 2 days ago, but do you want to give us a couple of highlights on Root and Cellar? I mean, that's something you're going to start working on probably next month, and then we can sort of go back to Shot Rock, where I know you've got a crew out right now.
That's great. At Root and Cellar, I mean, there's two distinct target sets. One is copper. We believe it's related to copper porphyry, and although there's some spectacular numbers there, the real focus is the gold. And there's a 5-kilometer trend there with 3 or 4 showings along it, with some spectacular values of gold up to 45 gram per ton and 1,400 ppm silver at a variety of locations. And I say these aren't just individual grab samples, 1 or 2 locations. I mean, most of these showings, some of them are up to 100, 150 samples he's collected, and most of them are anomalous in gold. And it was, the numbers speak for themselves. They're spectacular on these showings. But when I got there, it's not just the assays, it's just the rock. You see the whole things are shot through with alteration. There's a lot of other quartz veining. I actually like seeing a lot of background, anomalous gold in these systems, because it shows it's big and that the gold is spreading through the system. So I was really surprised that this project hadn't been snapped up before. I guess perhaps he wasn't marketing as much as others, and others were just taking too long to do the due diligence. But we're really glad that we've now come to terms, and I think it's going to be a great relationship with this prospector as we have with the one in Nova Scotia. But the numbers are spectacular, the setting is right, a lot of alteration, and if he can find all this mineralization simply by one person, with a shovel, we really think that we can expand on that quite rapidly by going and do funding some mechanical trenching and geophysics, and of course mapping and eventually drilling. But simply by trenching, we think we can get some extent to these occurrences.
And the other property where you've been active since sort of middle of last year, I guess, the Shot Rock property in Nova Scotia. That's another one that, it's a great story, because you've got this low sulfidation gold system in an area that wasn't supposed to have low sulfidation gold systems. Exactly. Nobody had ever found anything like that in Nova Scotia. I know you guys found it, in float bowls. You finally found an outcrop right before it started snowing. Yep. The snow's melted. I know you've had a crew out there, and it sounds like things have been expanding like really rapidly now that you've actually got a bunch of boots on the ground and no snow or anything in the way.
Exactly, and again, a lot of that started with the prospector going back into the project area whenever snow conditions allow in late winter, early spring, trying to find out all the outcrops and expanding the sort of the overall extent of this, but as soon as we put geos on the ground, a combination with the Prospector, now we're understanding the structure a lot more. We're finding these quartz veins and obviously following their orientation, and it's just exponential. The rate of discovery now of quartz veining in the different systems, and so.
Yeah, because what's your strike length on this thing now? I mean, the map that you threw up in the presentation that you just did at MIF was. There was a lot of stuff that wasn't there like a month ago.
Exactly. The strike length is about 4 kilometers. I say there's multiple structural sets that are seen to be controlling this, but the main one is an east-west fault, and we seem to have veining along that for about 4 kilometers. Then you see a splay off that, and now that splay is probably extending another 1.5 kilometers to the northeast. So this appears to be a really big footprint, and even the mapping geologist who first set foot on it about 10 days ago was really impressed by the size of it and the extent of the mineralization and the quartz veining.
Yeah, I mean that's what's kept my interest. It's a very, very big system. As Ian has gone into this in presentations and in news lists to some extent. I mean, it appears that the erosion level on this system is very shallow. Like it's essentially a fully preserved epithermal system. Mm-hmm. That being the case, the expectation isn't that you're going to get very high grades at surface. The top of these systems tend to have fairly low grades, but it does look like you're really starting to zero in on figuring out the structural setting that's hopefully probably going to give you a better idea of the kind of depth you might need to go to hit the boiling zone. But yeah. Even on top of that, like there's a lot coming. I mean, now that you've got the crew going, I mean, Christine, your VP exploration, she mentioned. I think she said you had 400 samples in the lab already, and there's more going like all the time now.
Exactly, and that's just from that main highway zone. There's a lot of other targets within the main clay block that we have to go back and explore now. Now that we have a better idea of the structures, and we know we see parallel structures that contain anomalous stream sediment samples from our work from last year. We've added a lot of other claim blocks earlier on this season, and there's some very strong anomalies there to follow up on. So even though obviously the focus is to keep building on the main highway zone, but there's a lot of other ground within the claim block still to test, and maybe even outside of the claim block. And I just, I tallied up all the known mineral occurrences in Nova Scotia a few weeks ago. There's about 1,200 in the government's database. If you remove all those ones that are either currently under license or in parkland, you still end up with over 600 known mineral occurrences in the province of Nova Scotia that have not been explored, perhaps since the first pioneers found them a century ago. Right. And so, in Quebec or Ontario, you'll never see these showings will be staked around the clock. Right. And if your main showing, your known showings aren't being explored, then no one's exploring brand new stuff, and so there's plenty of potential still out there for another shot rock and a discovery from scratch.
Yeah, I mean this is a great story. I mean I love discovery stories. It's no big secret, but again, there's no coincidence with the companies that I invite to these things. I try to get the timing right for the people in the audience, and in the case of Northern Shield. They're very active at shot right now. There's going to be a lot of news flow off of that. Probably some trenching or some more geophysics down the road, but you're setting up to be able to drill it later in the summer. And then at the same time, you're going to be jumping back to the root and cellar in Newfoundland, where you've already got really high grades on surface. So I think you're going to have a great summer. Lots of news flow. You should have a very exciting market. That's my expectation. So thanks for coming by and presenting. Ian Bliss, Northern Shield, NRN on the venture. Thank you.
Thank you.